Hi, I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married.
With children.
We're going on 2 years of marriage.
But we've been together for 10.
He brought 2.
She brought 2.
Together, that's 4 kids.
That's way too many kids.
And we want to share what works for us.
And what doesn't.
For step-parents, co-parents, marriage, being your best self, managing work, family, friends, health. We're going to talk about
everything.
You ready, babe?
Always.
Hey guys, welcome to another Everything Always podcast. I'm Summer Felix Mulder.
I am Michael Mulder.
And here we are talking about a topic that has come up a lot when it comes to step families, step parents, kids, all the things related to blended families and divorce.
And it's a topic that creates the foundation of a good relationship.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. And you might not even think of that. We had to evolve into it. Let's tell them what we're talking about.
Boundaries.
Boundaries.
We're talking about boundaries.
We're talking about boundaries. Boundaries can come in all different ways. I mean, boundaries are great in so many parts of your life. Sometimes it's relationship with your parents, it's with your in-laws, it's in work. But today we're specifically talking about ex-spouses, especially in terms of blended families. Like in the case of Mike and I, we are married and we have our 2 and 2 children together. And boundaries in the over 10 years now that we've been together have proven to be really essential to our relationship.
And it's always evolving and getting better, and we're learning all the time how to implement it.
We didn't just know this, obviously, when we first started dating, but things happen. And it's when things happen that you start to realize, okay, we need to communicate about this and figure out what to do here. And that's kind of how this all came about. We actually have together 3 rules that we stick to. And of course, things can evolve, but sticking to these 3 things has really helped us a lot because no doubt about it, just life as it is will bring on challenges and chaos and things just pop up. Okay, so let's talk about our 3 rules.
Yeah.
All right, rule number 1, keep your partner and the kids a priority. And we're going to go into that in a minute, but I want to get through the 3 rules first.
That should be a rule, not just for boundaries, but it should be a rule that you live by for pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Your family should come first.
But we're going to talk about what that means, what boundaries look like in terms of keeping each other a priority, your relationship a priority, and the kids a priority. Number 2, this is huge. Communication between your co-parent. If you are not in that situation where things are just so super friendly, high fives, like we never have any issues type of a thing, then you probably have some communication things and miscommunication, and sometimes you don't get along because let's face it, you got divorced for a reason, right? So number 2 is keep it strictly business. And we'll definitely go into that, but I'm going to guess you have a clue of what that means. And number 3, baby, I feel like I'm always doing all of the talking.
You are.
Can you talk about number 3?
Number 3, create rules for your communication.
Yes. So we'll get into all of that. But that's a high level view of the 3 rules.
I think it's really important that you actually take time, with your significant other to have a discussion about boundaries and verbalize and actually quantify what those boundaries mean to you, because, somebody's interpretation of what's okay and what's not okay could be totally different. And you could be doing something that actually is super hurting the other person's feelings or doing something that they don't think is right, and you don't even know about it.
Well, so really you're going into the first rule, which is keeping each other the priority as well as the kids. We are of the mindset, and some people are different, but we are of the mindset that the mother-father figure of any family situation should be of utmost priority, because it's that whole, if you guys aren't strong together, how are you going to be strong for your kids? And so it's super important for us to make each other a priority. But here's the thing, you don't always know what those things are that make that other person feel like a priority.
That's right. And what you think in your mind is definitely not what is being perceived by someone else.
Right.
So It's like sitting down and actually creating a boundaries plan, making, with intention. Maybe it's not written, but it's definitely verbalized. So you both have a clear understanding of what your common boundaries are.
Yeah. Just kind of an example. It's like the end of the day and wife is in the kitchen and her phone is ringing and she picks it up and it's her ex-husband. And he's all down and upset because his dad's being a super jerk to him. And he calls the wife because they were married for so many years before and she gets it. She knows who this guy was. And so he's trying to connect with somebody. And then you've got new husband in the kitchen overhearing this, and he's kind of going, interesting. My wife just kind of like went over in the side of the room and she's having this private conversation with her ex-husband and he's upset. So needless to say, if you're in the husband's situation or you've been in that type of situation, you start to go, well, wait a minute, there's this kind of emotional connection going on, which seems to be something that would be a privilege of a marriage and that type of a relationship.
In a relationship.
Right.
And the problem is, it's really hard to create all new rules. You were married. There was a reason you were married. There was a connection there at some point. Things, no matter how you got to not being together anymore, this gray area exists in the middle.
Oh, especially right at the beginning of divorce.
It's really hard. And then you throw kids into the mix from the male perspective. You're trying to figure out, well, how do I provide for my family? How do I take care of these kids? What's the dynamic? Like, I'm supposed to be the protector, the person that's like taking the lead in these things. And you don't know where the line should be drawn. Like, what's the line?
Yeah. I think that's why it's so good that these things should be talked about, and I don't think often it is talked about. I mean, I think we've done a fair amount of reading and heard other people's experiences. And that's how we kind of arrived at, hey, well, let's really get down to how do you feel about this? And how do I feel about this? And you have to actually communicate to understand that feeling. And, my mom actually told me this right at the beginning of my divorce. And she said, Summer, you're dating now. I think it was when you and I were dating. And she's like, there's this like fuzzy area. It's hard, but you have to remember that you each are in situations where you are not married anymore. So as much as you want to be nice and maybe go out of your way or do certain things, you have to understand that then those things start to become expectations, and those things are totally valid in a married relationship. But once, one person or both of you decided that we no longer have a marriage anymore, it becomes a very different type of relationship, especially if you are trying to make it work with somebody else.
You don't just give up the sex or the, living in the same place or having fun or like all of those things. You have to give up all of those pieces in order to have a clean and clear separation.
Yes,
and
exactly.
It is muddy water at the beginning.
Yeah.
Throw the kids in the mix and it's muddy water full of sharks.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes it's not just communication between, for if you're using us as an example, between husband, wife, or, whoever the couple is. It's also communication between who you are co-parenting with or who your ex-spouse is, just to say, what, I think like it's best if we leave these things, that these are the things that we talk about, which goes into rule number 2, which is keep it strictly business. And I know that both of you and I have experienced it where it's like, but you want it to be like all super friendly. And you can be there. I think there's a difference between, there's a difference between being friends and being friendly. And there is a line, and friendly is more like, just kind of it's being cordial, it's being nice, it's being, how can I help type of a thing. There's actually a danger when you are still going to be friends, especially if you've already had a history of arguing or miscommunicating or not getting along. It's kind of like you invite all of that to remain that way because you're like, well, we're supposed to be friends and partners and this and that.
Well, the other thing too, in terms of like communication and keeping it business, most of the time there's something going on that made you get divorced. You're probably not very happy about certain things. You've got ego involved. you've got emotions, you may super dislike the person that you're no longer with and actually are like, I would love to tear into this person. And it can go both ways. And it can force you to do things and become a person that you never even would consider that you could be. Right?
No, it can bring some ugly sides. Yeah. And so that's a point right there. I guarantee, I promise, nobody feels good. Nobody feels like awesome or good about themselves when they're being mean. What it does, it's a very short period of power, because anger has a way of making you feel powerful or like empowered, but it's not like a real empowerment. It's more just I have all this built up energy. I need to get rid of it. Instead of feeling sad, I'm just going to feel angry. So it's almost like a false good feeling, if that makes any kind of sense.
And all of that can be resolved. Communication and a plan. And as number 2 on our list, keeping it business. Keeping it business is the easiest thing to do.
Well, let's talk about what that looks like, though. So when you talk about keeping it business, we kind of generalize it into 3 things. Like, does this, message, does this communication involve scheduling, in terms of games or pickup, or what time am I dropping off, or who's doing what in this situation? It might also be a health matter. We need to talk about, a doctor appointment, or when child is sick and can you help, or that type of a thing. And then the other one was squaring up when it comes to finances. Like, hey, I paid for these things. Can you pay for your half, or whatever it is? Or, hey, what time can you bring over my child support check? Those type of things are
basic things having to do with co-parenting.
It's the business of the relationship, pretty much.
Right. When it starts to involve feelings or comments or negative things or things that don't really pertain to anything other than they get to rant or unload on you or something like that.
Yes. I mean,
those are things that automatically cross.
They do. And here's the thing, like, I'll give a piece of advice. We have another, we'll go into another podcast probably just on this, but just like an example. I mean, I remember a friend of mine had got this text message from an ex, and he had said something about, like, oh, nice to know you're wearing fancy jeans and high heels, or something really snarky, like, you must not be hurting so much on money. It was just a very snarky type of a thing. Or, and another day it was just like, oh, something very rude about her finally dating somebody. Like, it was things like that were just so unnecessary and actually had absolutely nothing to do with the kids.
You still care. Like, it actually is basically like, I want your attention. I want to influence you with some type of feeling. I want to make you feel a certain way. And it might be I want to make you feel bad, but that's only to make yourself feel better, which only means you still need to feel better, which means you still got issues.
Well, it is definitely an attention seeker. It is definitely asking to feel important in that person's life, because if I can get to you and you respond to me, then I am important. So really, we talk about this a lot, is if it doesn't involve the business of what needs to be taken care of, you just don't respond, or you politely say, I'm not going to respond to this, because, the thing is those types of things are so upsetting, and it's upsetting on both sides. It's upsetting for the person who's saying it, the person who's receiving it. It's not good for anyone. It's just bad energy. And it's just, if you've really got this strong need to say something, like,
I can tell you, when that happens, that's when communication stops. When you go past the boundary, you've now lost I wouldn't say the right. I mean, there's no right there. I mean, it's not the privilege.
Well,
that sounds
I think
but it's more about you've now crossed the line, and communication at that point has to stop. And become even more formal. If it's not about the kids, you just keep it on the kids. You don't respond to the negative things. You also, on principle, don't really have to respond to the good things. Hey, just wanted to let you know I'm having a super awesome day. Or, hey, I got a promotion.
I mean, that does happen too. That kind of stuff happens too.
They need the accolades. I just want to keep it all business. And when it's not business, then communication isn't.
Well, and that just goes back to the point. I mean, that's true. There's both ways that it can go, and that's when you're crossing the line. And so crossing lines leads to fuzzy situations. And so, what happens is then it becomes an issue for, you, of course, and then it becomes an issue for your spouse. And it's like, you just have to, constantly remind yourself, what is my priority here? Do my actions show the importance and that my children are a priority and that my relationship with my spouse is a priority. Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for taking a chance on us and listening to our podcast. Our goal is for you to not only learn from us, but to learn with us. We've taken a leap on being pretty open about our blended family and how we do life in everything. We want to make sure we bring you all the things you want to hear, always. So please, if you have specific questions like, how do I get along with my ex? Or how do I get along with his ex? Or how do I set some boundaries in place? Or why doesn't my stepson like me? Please email us with your questions. Email them to info@summerfelix.com because we want to answer those questions and we aim to bring you the best guests and conversations to address your most burning issues about everything, always.
Response time and access to you 24 hours a day. These are all things where you can.
Well, now you're you're really good at segues. No, but that's good. It's a great segue. Well, it's awesome. Like you're just naturally
keep this thing rolling.
He knows our rules so well. All right. So the third one is creating rules with communication. Take it the whole.
I mean, basically the situation is that you're on call for maybe your boss, your spouse, your kids. Fast responses and being readily available 24 hours for those people. Yeah, I believe in that. Having to be on call and answer right away for things that are going to be disruptive to your own personal time and space. Those things can be dealt with in a way that there's boundaries. You could say, listen, there's no reason you need to be texting me at 11:30 at night about something that isn't urgent. Please put it in an email and I'll get back to you within, a few hours of receiving it. You don't have direct access to text me at these times anymore. And it's rude. It's kind of the same mentality. Would you text an acquaintance that you were trying to set up a meeting with at 11:30 at night? You probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't text them at 6 a.m. Mm-hmm. You probably wouldn't send them a text message at 11 and then at 11:15 send another text message that says, "What, are you ignoring me?"
Can I bring another four agreement from the four agreements?
You know what? We love the four.
I do love the four agreements, but here's the thing: even if you are a person that's
our kids love the four agreements.
Our kids love the four agreements.
We're gonna make them listen to it again on Christmas morning before they open their presents. Don't jump.
You have to listen to one agreement before every present. No.
You're making assumptions that there's presents in there.
But for real, let's just say I text my ex-husband to say, hey, what's the total amount I owe you for such and such, whatever it is. I'm just throwing something out there. And if I don't get a response, do you know what agreement I'm going to use? Don't take it personally.
Oh, that's a good one. But
that's the thing is, I think the main reason that somebody might get fired up is because they're taking it personally, and because they might be saying, well, you're not making me important. And really what it comes down to is it's really about the business of what's being asked. If it's an emergency, you're all about it. And please, I have to say this because I have seen this happen. If you are somebody who is trying to get a hold of anyone, in any situation, please don't do the fake emergency to freak somebody out so that they get back to you. That's just dirty. That's just a dirty thing to do.
No, it's more like this. I think at the root of it, it's that you're not together anymore.
But we've seen this.
We've been out of it.
We've been out with couples, honestly, where a girl has done this to one of our friends that we were out with. And it's did you just fake an emergency about your child so that he would text you back about, and it was nothing, it wasn't anything urgent. It was just hey, what do you think about signing this kid up for that sport? It was very strange. And I just thought, well, okay, so speaking of the dinner thing, let's talk about communications and the boundaries in terms of going back to that first rule, keeping your kids the priority, keeping your relationship the priority. What happens when you're on family vacation, or what happens when you're on a date with your spouse and you're like, dude, my phone's blowing up. You see it's not an emergency.
The boundary that you're talking about is the same boundary that you should have with people that are going to be texting you about work.
Right. Exactly.
If we're on, we can be on vacation and be out on the ski slopes and having a great time and all the kids are there. But there's a boundary that says, hey, listen, I'm on family time right now. And if it's not an emergency, it can wait. There's no house on fire. Guess what? Things will wait. Now there are times where there is something that is time sensitive and critical and all of those things.
Absolutely.
And that's all good. I'm not saying that you just should turn off your phone. I'm just saying, hey, listen, you know what? Set a precedent that sometimes things will wait. There's plenty of time to get to all of it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, people, and that goes with anything. People aren't just waiting around to respond to, whoever has a need at that moment and needs a question answered. Everybody has a life and they've got different things that are priorities during that day. So I think we've made that point pretty clear. I would just like to share a little bit of my whole perspective in terms of boundaries and why it became so important for me. It's something that's become important just in life in general. And I think that it's just become extremely important. It was really awesome to implement those things with each other in our relationship. You and I did it, I think, little by little, because we just kept learning along the way. And I think that's like the big reason too of doing this, is being able to share some of those things, because you might be in a newly divorced situation, newly dating situation, something like that. And I just think if you can hear some of the things that really have worked for us, you can maybe take a little bit of a shortcut.
Yeah, man. It took us a super long time, and it was really hard.
Well, it's hard because you know what? The thing with boundaries is that it's only when things go bad and things aren't going well that you go, oh, man, I really need some boundaries here. That's it. I am no longer this. I am no longer that. And then when things start to smooth out.
I clearly remember we were sitting there going okay, this is out of control. We need to have a conversation about boundaries and find what our common ground was.
Yeah.
And I literally remember the conversation of going these are the things that we have to do. This is these are things that make me feel bad. These are things that need to happen. Here's things that I'm doing that are working. And we had a conversation about it. And it was kind of we just turned a corner at that point, and things got way better when we quantified and defined exactly what the boundaries were and what we wanted our communication style and relationship to be.
Yeah.
And that's when, I think things got better.
Yeah.
Which is what we're striving for, right?
Absolutely.
We want good communication. We want, we want to have situations that are functional and that help to raise the kids in a very functional way.
Well, and speaking of the kids, because, we're talking a ton about, which was the point, is to talk about the boundaries that you have with your ex-spouse and who you're co-parenting with. But how does this make the kids a priority? And I'll tell you exactly why. I promise you, because I've seen it too many times, that when the boundaries aren't exercised, it's unfortunate, but there's more feelings hurt, and then, people going back and forth. There's a lot more upset that's happening, and the kids feel it. Whether they are directly hearing it or not, they feel it, they know it, and it's just there, and it's so unfair. And that, I know we've got either in the next one or the podcast after, we're talking about that type of stuff and how detrimental all of that is for kids. But really, if you can look at the bigger picture and you love your kids, which I'm sure you absolutely do, and want them to have a really good life experience, then why add any more drama than there needs to be? And it really does start with, it starts with us. We all have emotions. We can all get super heated up about different things. We can all get triggered. And it's having that emotional maturity and intelligence to really take a minute before spiraling out of control, saying things that, just firing up and going, I'm just going to say this. And then it's going to be fine, because then I'm over it.
It's the selfish thing to do.
It is. And
it's be a grown up, keep it business. leave that ego crap aside and do something for someone else, and those someone else's happen to be your kids.
They do, because the more that you exercise that control and the more that you keep it business, like, look, we all have opinions. We have opinions about other people, I'm sure, all day long. But the thing about that is that it doesn't have, those opinions really have nothing to do with the kids. It has to do with you and that other person. Even though you have those opinions with that other person, they're your opinions. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't do any good to get all...
There needs to be some clever saying for opinions, kind of like assumptions. You know what they say about assumptions, right? You know what they say about opinions? I don't know. I actually don't know that. We need to come up with something.
Opinions? It just sounds funny. Okay, here's the deal. I just want to summarize our 3 takeaways here. Okay, so here's the deal. 3 rules. Keep your current partner and your kids the priority. 2, keep it strictly business. And 3, create those rules about communication. And so some good guidelines to follow is to just ask yourself, am I making my ex a priority over my current spouse and partner? Am I making him or her a priority over the kids? And another thing is, when it comes to communication and how you're interacting with that person, is ask yourself, does this actually move the needle in terms of the kids' scheduling, in terms of health and logistics, in terms of money? Does it actually move the needle forward? Is it actually going to be productive, or is this emotional or ego-driven? Ask yourself right before you send that text message that you want to send so badly. Just ask yourself that. Is this going to be productive, or is this going to have a consequence to it? And then the last thing about communication is, in terms of the boundaries of timing and everything, is, have I communicated with my spouse what our rules are together? When we're together, we're not going to, look at our phone for this. Or in our family, he knows that I will not be talking about all the emotional things with my ex, or she's not going to be... I think you get the point. Basically, having the rules between each other and understanding, here are the things that make me feel a priority. Here are the things that upset me. Exactly. Define your rules and respect the rules. Make sure you listen to each other above all. That's super huge.
Now, is there maybe some tool that people could get?
Absolutely. We are going to have a downloadable for things like this with those takeaways. So if you are interested, you can totally check out the show notes, and you will be able to download a really cool little PDF that summarizes these takeaways. These are our takeaways, and they have
guideline sheet.
They have worked for us. Here's the thing. Like we've said before, chaos tends to ensue because you can only control yourself, and sometimes you can't even control yourself. So things happen. But if you can return, you have something that you can return to and look at, it's so super helpful. So you can definitely download those and think about your situation right now. Like, what can you do right now? Is it a self-check? Is it like, okay, maybe I'll take a little responsibility and say, I maybe shouldn't be texting my ex at midnight. Maybe I'll stop doing that. Or maybe you're in a marriage right now and you're like, you know what? True. I don't think that my wife actually even knows the things that upset me. So I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with her because she probably can't read my mind. So those are just things that you can do today to take action to make it better and create those rules, create the boundaries. Oh, and most importantly, stick to it, because they don't work unless you actually stick to it.
Yes, that's true.
All right, guys.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
I hope you walked away with something, even if it's just a little ounce, a little niblet, a little nugget. And we look forward to...
We'll hear ya, see ya, think about you.
Oh, and just remember, if you guys have specific questions or topics that you would like us to address, because we kind of did some pre-stuff before, and that's why we're bringing up these topics for people that we just knew in our communities and asked for help with, what are the burning topics. Please, you can DM us. You can also email info@summerfelix.com, DM through Instagram.
And while you're there, like and share.
Yeah, like and share the podcast and help others, because we're hoping that we can bring valuable content and just continue to bring that. And just really, it's have the conversation. And if you have really awesome advice yourself, let us know, because we're still seeking. We're not like the full-on experts.
Actually,
trust me, we're not.
We're right in the middle of it.
We're totally in the middle.
We're trying to learn.
We're learning just like you, but we can at least start by sharing what does work. All right, guys, thanks so much. And we look forward to the next episode.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to our podcast. You know what they say, if you can't find what you're looking for, then you need to create it. So that's what we did.
Yep, I scoured the internet and looked for the tribe that spoke to me, and I just couldn't find the community that was raw, vulnerable, and really wanting to make a change to the millions of families like ours. So I decided to create it. It took about one conversation for my husband to say, I'm in, and here we are.
But it takes listeners like you to keep it alive.
So please, if you like this, write a review, take a screenshot, share it on your social media. Tell people, it means the world to us.
Remember to email us. We would love to hear from you.
And please share this with someone you love.
And be bold enough to share it with someone that you don't.